Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that more than 1 billion people watched astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin take their very first steps on the moon after traveling 240,000 miles through space? Learn that Michael Collins remained in the Command Module Columbia, while Armstrong and Aldrin guided the lunar module Eagle to a safe landing on the Sea of Tranquility. Discover that Neil Armstrong announced the unforgettable words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
Imagine being handed a project at work where the deadline feels completely arbitrary.
Right, like somebody just threw a dart at a calendar.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the technology you need to actually complete this project, it doesn't even exist yet.
Oh, and your biggest rival is already miles ahead of you.
Yeah. And if you make a single miscalculation with the physics, people will die.
That's just the ultimate pressure cooker. I mean, most organizations would buckle immediately under that kind of weight. You're essentially being asked to invent the future on a stopwatch.
Right. You would probably just say, no thanks, I'll take a desk job.
Yeah, I definitely would.
But in 1961, NASA couldn't quit. I mean, they were bleeding edge scientists, sure, but they're also pawns in this massive geopolitical chess match. The Soviet Union was beating the United States in the space race, and the clock was ticking. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because today we are taking a deep dive into a phenomenal historical text. It's titled, "The Eagle Has Landed: The Triumph of Apollo 11. And our mission for you today isn't to just, rattle off a timeline of dates that you could read in a textbook.
No, that would be pretty dry.
Yeah, exactly. We are looking at how crushing, almost impossible constraints actually forge some of the most profound innovations in human history.
Which is really the only way to understand what happened in the summer of 1969. To understand the triumph, we first have to look at the mechanics of that pressure.
The pressure was immense.
Oh, absolutely. It all started on May 25th, 1961. President John F. Kennedy stood before a special joint session of Congress, and he issued a mandate that, scientifically speaking, it bordered on the absurd.
It really did.
He basically said, "I believe this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth."
Before this decade is out. I mean, he literally puts a timer on the wall for the entire country. But why a decade? Was there a scientific reason they needed 9 years, or was that purely a political deadline to just show up the Soviets?
It was entirely about geopolitical optics. Setting that hard end-of-the-decade deadline, it forced a mobilization of resources that America hadn't seen since World War II.
Wow.
Yeah, NASA was this massive international team of scientists and engineers, and suddenly they had to build launch vehicles and spacecraft through sheer brute force trial and error.
Which is terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
Because pushing the boundaries of engineering at that velocity, it carries massive risk. The machinery often fails way before the theory can catch up.
Which brings us to a really dark reality check.
Yeah.
January 27, 1967. This is the Apollo 1 tragedy.
Yeah.
And what strikes me here is that this wasn't even in space. They weren't launching. It was just a ground test at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Down on Cape Canaveral, right.
Right. And it killed astronauts. Gus Grissom, Ed White II, and Roger Chaffee. But how does a routine test on a launch pad turn fatal so quickly?
Well, it comes down to the chemical realities of the spacecraft's design at the time. You see, to save weight and reduce the complexity of the life support system, the Apollo 1 cabin was pumped full of pure pressurized oxygen.
Pure oxygen.
Pure oxygen. And in that kind of environment, materials that are normally perfectly safe, they become incredibly flammable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a single stray spark from a frayed wire turned the entire cabin into a localized inferno almost instantly.
But couldn't they just open the door? I mean, they were on the ground.
They couldn't.
Why not?
The hatch was designed to open inward. And because the cabin was so highly pressurized, that internal pressure essentially locked the door shut from the inside.
You're kidding.
No, the astronauts literally couldn't pull it open against the force.
That is just horrifying. I mean, it really forces you to wonder how an organization doesn't just fold up shop after a catastrophic oversight like that, especially when the whole world is watching.
Right, it's a very public failure.
But instead, they had to implement a complete systemic overhaul of the Apollo program.
Yeah.
I mean, they redesigned the hatch to open outward in under 5 seconds.
Which is a huge engineering feat on its own.
Exactly. And they changed the cabin atmosphere to a much safer nitrogen-oxygen mix. but they literally had to rebuild the machine while the timeline was still ticking. It's like trying to redesign a commercial airliner while it's in a nosedive.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The momentum of Kennedy's deadline is pulling you down, but the engineering is demanding that you pull up.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the way NASA recovered from Apollo 1 is staggering. They realized that flying a single massive ship straight to the moon and back was just too dangerous.
So they needed a new plan.
Right. They needed a modular system. So they came up with a mothership, the command module, that would stay up in orbit, and a separate smaller ship, the lunar module, that would detach and actually go down to the surface.
Which meant they had to figure out how to fly 2 spaceships at once and then reconnect them in the literal vacuum of space. And they had to figure it out fast. After Apollo 1, the timeline just goes into hyperdrive.
Oh, the speed is unbelievable.
Right. In October 1968, Apollo 7, the first manned spacecraft, successfully orbits the Earth. Then, just 2 months later, in December, Apollo 8 takes 3 astronauts to the far side of the moon.
We should pause on Apollo 8 for a second because the psychological weight of that mission is just enormous.
How so?
Well, they left Earth's gravitational pull, flew around the moon, and saw the dark side for the first time in human history.
Oh, wow.
And they experienced Earthrise, right? Seeing our entire planet as this fragile little marble in an endless black void, it proved the navigation systems actually worked in deep space.
But they still hadn't tested the lunar module.
No, not yet.
That happens 3 months later in March 1969 with Apollo 9.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't get. They tested the lunar module in Earth's orbit. Why not just take it to the moon and test it there? Weren't they wasting precious time?
It seems like it, but it was a very calculated risk management strategy. The maneuver they had to pull off is called lunar orbit rendezvous.
Okay.
It's 2 ships disconnecting, flying apart, and finding each other again. If they test the lunar module's engines out around the moon and they fail, the crew dies.
Oh.
Yeah, they'd be stranded 240,000 miles away. But if they test the module in Earth's orbit and the engines fail, the command module can just easily swoop in, rescue the crew, and drop back into Earth's atmosphere.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. You test the lifeboats close to shore before you take the Titanic across the ocean.
Exactly.
And that leads to the final dress rehearsal in May 1969, Apollo 10. They take the whole setup to the moon, they detach the lunar module, drop it down to just 9 miles above the lunar surface, and then fly back up.
9 miles.
They got so close. I read somewhere that NASA intentionally shorted them on fuel so they wouldn't be tempted to just land the thing right then and there.
I mean, the temptation would have been overwhelming. You're right there. But Apollo 10 proved that the radar and the docking mechanics functioned perfectly under lunar gravity.
Which is incredible.
It took 5 years of work to get to this phase, and then they executed 4 massive, infinitely complex test missions in just 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, which set the stage for the main event.
The big one. July 16th, 1969. Apollo 11 launches from the Kennedy Space Center. You've got the crew, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins.
The iconic trio.
Right. They travel 240,000 miles in 76 hours, and they enter lunar orbit on July 19th. But here's where the reality of that modular design really kicks in.
Yeah, this is the tense part.
On July 20th, the lunar module, named the Eagle, with Armstrong and Aldrin inside, physically separates from the command module, which was named Columbia.
Leaving Michael Collins completely alone in Columbia.
Yes. Everyone always focuses on Armstrong and Aldrin taking those first steps. But Collins' role, it just gives me immense anxiety.
It's terrifying.
He is orbiting the moon alone at thousands of miles an hour. If the Eagle lands and its ascent engine fails to ignite when they try to leave, Collins can't go down and get them.
No, he doesn't have a lander.
Right. He just has to fly home by himself.
The psychological burden on Collins is arguably one of the heaviest in human history. And, it wasn't just the fear of leaving his friends behind, it was the intense physics problem he had to solve.
What do you mean?
Well, when Armstrong and Aldrin launched back up from the surface, Collins had to manually calculate the orbital rendezvous mechanics to catch them.
While flying.
Yes, he is moving at around 3,600 miles per hour, trying to link up with another tiny metal box that is also moving at thousands of miles an hour.
It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster.
Exactly. And remember, for 47 minutes of every single orbit, Collins was completely cut off from radio communication.
Oh, because he was passing behind the dark side of the moon.
Right. The moon was literally blocking his radio signal to Earth. For those 47 minutes, he was the most isolated human being to ever exist.
Wow.
The entire mission's success required absolute trust in the mathematics and the machinery. Armstrong and Aldrin had the glory of the lunar dust, sure, but Collins held the tether to Earth.
And while he's up there doing that math, the Eagle is going down. 2 hours after separating from Columbia, the Eagle descends. It's 4:20 p.m. on July 20 in 1969.
The moment of truth.
The craft touches down on the Sea of Tranquility, and Armstrong radios Houston with those famous words, "The Eagle has landed."
Just chills every time.
But getting there was only half the battle, right? I mean, they actually had to go outside.
Yeah, this is where we shift from the theory of orbital mechanics to the visceral, physical reality of standing on an alien world.
It's July 21, 1969. At 10:56 p.m., Neil Armstrong steps off the ladder onto the gray, powdery surface. He becomes the first person to walk on the moon, delivering that iconic line, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
And the audience for this is just staggering.
Yeah, the source notes that over 1 billion people watched this on television.
Yeah.
A live feed from 250,000 miles away.
That was a seventh of the global population at the time. It was this rare moment of complete global synchronization.
But they weren't just up there for a photo op.
Oh, no. Once they were on the surface, they had a very rigorous scientific checklist. 19 minutes later, Buzz Aldrin joined Armstrong, and out of their 21 total hours on the moon, they spent about 2.5 hours outside the spacecraft.
And what are they actually doing out there? I know they're gathering soil samples, but they're also actively testing their range of movement. Which, watching the footage, it sounds silly. They're just kind of jumping around on the moon.
Right, the bunny hops.
Yeah. But why was that data so critical?
Because they had literally no idea how the human musculoskeletal system would react to 1/6 of Earth's gravity.
They just didn't know.
No, they needed to know, if an astronaut fell over, could they physically stand back up in a fully pressurized suit?
Oh, because the suit is so rigid.
Exactly. Furthermore, they needed to study the regolith, the lunar dust. Was it going to stick to the suits? Would it combust when they got back into the oxygen-rich cabin?
That goes right back to the Apollo 1 fears.
Right.
Which just shows how dangerous the unknown really was.
Yeah.
But amidst all that high-stakes science, here's where it gets really interesting. They had to manage the PR, too.
Yes, they did.
The optics of this triumph were crucial for America. They go to plant this specially made American flag, but there is a major atmospheric problem. There is no air on the moon.
No air, no wind.
Right. So if you plant a standard flag, it's just going to hang totally limp against the pole.
Which looks terrible in a photograph.
Yeah, it would look incredibly defeated.
So NASA engineers had to devise this brilliantly practical hack. They engineered a right-angled flagpole with a horizontal bar extending along the top edge of the fabric.
Okay.
It basically held the flag out flat. And because the astronauts actually struggled to fully extend that top rod in their bulky suits, the fabric had a permanent ripple in it.
Oh, that's why it looks like that. I mean, it looked like it was waving in a breeze that didn't exist.
Exactly.
It's essentially a clever Broadway stage prop being utilized on the ultimate cosmic stage.
Yeah, it's very theatrical.
And speaking of those photos, I love the ingenuity of how they captured them. The astronauts couldn't exactly hold a traditional viewfinder up to their eyes wearing those massive fishbowl helmets.
No, the suits heavily restricted their arm mobility. They couldn't bend their elbows enough, so they used wide-angle lenses and actually mounted the cameras directly onto the chest plates of their spacesuits.
So you just turn your entire body into the tripod.
Pretty much.
It's such a practical blue-collar solution to a literal space-age problem.
Yeah.
And, that blend of the profound and the practical, it extends to what the astronauts actually brought with them in their luggage.
Oh, the personal items, yes.
Yeah, our source highlights some details that perfectly illustrate the human element of this mission. Neil Armstrong actually carried a piece of wood from the left propeller of the Wright brothers' 1903 airplane.
When you look at the timeline of human aviation, that is just a stunning detail.
It really is. Only 66 years separate a wooden biplane lifting off a sandy beach in North Carolina and a man walking in a pressurized suit on a gray, airless rock in space.
It's wild to think about.
He carried the literal dawn of flight to its ultimate apex. And Buzz Aldrin brought something entirely different but equally profound. After landing the module before they even went outside, Aldrin privately took communion.
Yes, prepared for him by his pastor back home. And the source actually points out that this practice is quite similar to the sacrament bread used in the LDS faith.
What's fascinating here is the sheer juxtaposition of that moment.
It really is the intersection of our oldest human traditions with our newest technological achievements.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a man engaging in an ancient spiritual ritual of vulnerability and faith while sitting inside a titanium machine engineered by the world's most brilliant physicists, resting on a completely barren celestial body.
It's a powerful image.
It is. Humanity didn't leave its culture behind to achieve science. They brought all of their history, their faith, and their curiosity with them to this sterile rock.
And in exchange, the moon gave them something back. I mean, they didn't just scoop up generic dirt. The rock samples they brought back fundamentally altered our understanding of planetary geology.
They really did.
They discovered 3 brand new minerals that had never been seen on Earth.
Right. Tranquilliate, pyroxferrite, and armalcolite.
Armalcolite, which is just a brilliant naming convention.
Yeah, they cleverly smashed together the astronauts' names.
Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. Armalcol.
Exactly.
But, why does finding new minerals matter? I think a lot of people just assume a rock is a rock.
Well, not at all. You see, Earth's geology is constantly being rewritten. It's weathered by wind, water, and atmospheric oxygen.
So it's always changing.
Constantly.
Yeah.
But the moon has none of those things. So finding new minerals like armalcolite on the moon gave scientists this pristine insight into how rocks form in a vacuum under extreme solar radiation.
Wow.
It essentially provided a frozen time capsule of the early solar system's chemical makeup.
So they accomplish all of this. They make history. They gather the time capsules. They leave a plaque that says, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind."
A beautiful message.
And then they launch back up. Collins executes the orbital rendezvous perfectly, and they head home. On July 24 at 12:01 p.m., they splash down in the Pacific Ocean.
Safe and sound.
And you'd expect them to be carried out on the shoulders of the Navy, right? Parades, the whole 9 yards.
Well, that would be the cinematic ending, sure.
But the scientific reality was much stricter. They locked them in a modified Airstream trailer.
They did.
They are immediately put into strict quarantine for 3 weeks. I look at this and I think, wait a minute. They just proved the moon is a dead, sterile environment by bringing back those rocks.
Yeah.
Why are they suddenly terrified of space plagues?
It comes down to the concept of planetary protection and really just dealing with unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
Yes, scientists heavily suspected the moon was sterile, but they didn't know for an absolute fact that lunar microbes didn't exist.
Because they had never been there.
Exactly. They had just exposed human biology to an entirely foreign biosphere. If there was some form of lunar pathogen, introducing it to Earth's ecosystem could have been totally catastrophic.
Which just grounds this epic mythological saga right back down into the muck of human reality. You conquer the cosmos, you walk on the stars, and then you have to sit in a metal tube looking out a tiny window for 21 days just in case you caught a cold.
Right, because we are still frail biological creatures.
We really are.
But, that frailty doesn't diminish the achievement. In fact, our source material offers a really beautiful concluding perspective on how this mission reshaped our relationship with the cosmos.
How so?
It looks at this technological triumph through an ancient lens, specifically connecting it to the Old Testament.
Right, the text brings up Psalm 8, verses 1 and 4.
Yes.
It says, "O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who has set thy glory above the heavens. When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars, which thou hast ordained."
It's a very grounded ancient text.
It is. And, a cynic might argue that landing a machine on the moon strips away that ancient mystery, that the science somehow ruins the magic.
But the source text argues the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Stepping foot on the moon didn't replace ancient wonder with cold, calculated science. It actually magnified the awe.
I love that.
Think about it. Looking back at Earth from the surface of the moon, recognizing it as the work of the Lord's fingers, it represents this incredible harmony. The science provided the vessel to get there, but the human capacity for spiritual wonder is what gave the destination its meaning.
It makes space physical, but keeps it miraculous.
Beautifully said.
And the source text actually poses a few questions that I want to turn directly over to you listening right now. When you look at the moon, do you see the work of the Lord? Have you ever thought about what it would actually feel like to travel there?
Just imagine it.
To stand in that low gravity, your boots sinking into gray dust and looking up to see a bright blue marble suspended in absolute silent darkness.
It forces a total recalibration of what you consider to be your world.
It really does. So, as we bring this all together, what does this actually mean for us today? The triumph of Apollo 11 wasn't just a feat of math and metal. It was a story born out of severe geopolitical anxiety and forged in the devastating tragedy of the Apollo 1 fire.
Absolutely. It was defined by the willingness to redesign the system mid-flight, to execute 4 massive test missions in just 8 months.
And it relied on the profound isolation of Michael Collins, trusting orbital mechanics in the dark, and the ingenuity to mount cameras on chests and build right-angled flagpoles.
You really cannot separate the communion bread from the titanium module or the Wright brothers would from the discovery of armalcolite.
Right. They're all pieces of the exact same human puzzle. We started by talking about an impossible deadline, like an airplane in a nosedive. What NASA did was pull the nose up at the absolute last microsecond, and they flew higher than humanity ever had before.
It's the ultimate triumph of multiple perspectives. Politics, engineering, faith, and science all coming together in July 1969.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. We talked about that plaque they left behind on the leg of the eagle. We came in peace for all mankind. That was our message in 1969.
Yeah.
Next time you step outside at night and look up at that glowing gray surface, ask yourself this. If humanity had to travel to a new world today and leave just a single sentence stamped onto a metal plaque, what would our generation's message be? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep looking up, keep asking questions, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.